You're listening to the Good Food CFO podcast, where we challenge the status quo of the food industry, celebrate good food founders who are building businesses on their own terms, introduce industry disruptors, and are redefining equitability. If you're ready to build your financial confidence and join the good food revolution to change the way the food industry does business, you are in the right place. I'm the Good Food CFO and your host, Sarah Delavan. Today on the podcast, I am joined by Vincent Finazzo. He's the founder and CEO of River Ward's Produce Market, an independent grocery store that opened in Philadelphia's Fishtown neighborhood in 2016. Finazzo now employs more than 75 team members across 2 market locations, with the second being in Philadelphia's Old City neighborhood. A Goldman Sachs 10K scholar, Finazzo earned Best of Philly honors from Philadelphia Magazine in 2022 and was also named a local hero by Edible Philly in 2017. Finazzo, who was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, and earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Sculpture from Columbia College in Chicago, has turned his once small produce delivery business into an Inc. 5000 selection as one of the fastest growing companies in America, and is the first independent market in Philly to offer a $16 minimum wage, plus medical benefits to all full-time employees. Vincent is sharing the story of his transition from the art world to the grocery world, how River Ward's was started, how they source for their 2 locations, how they're reimagining grocery categories, and a lot more. Vincent and River Ward's are true disruptors moving the good food revolution forward, and I can't wait for you to listen to our conversation. Vincent, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to chat with you because I think that independent grocers are really such a huge part of revolutionizing our food industry. And for that reason, I'm excited to talk about your market and how you approach running a market. Do you feel like you're a disruptor to the current food industry?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I recognize when someone from the outside, conveys a problem that they've had with the industry as a whole. And we realize like, oh, we don't have that problem, or we've dealt with it in a different way.
Right. That's really interesting. So you are the founder of River Ward Produce, and your first location was founded in 2016. Is that right?
Correct.
And because as I mentioned in the intro, you have a sculpting degree.
Sure. Yeah, I do.
How did you get from that degree to founding a grocery store?
Real naturally, the progression was pretty easy. Food has always been an important part of my life.
Yeah.
From shopping in markets in the Detroit area with my mother, my grandmother, being raised by my mother and my grandparents, food was always an essential part of the household.
Mm.
Naturally, I rejected all of that when I was a teenager, of course, and then took myself to school in Chicago. I got a degree in sculpture, and aesthetics were always so important to me, and seeing how someone would perceive an object and be attracted to it and what that meant. I studied that a lot, relational aesthetics and all that theory. And then when I left school, I worked for the Detroit Institute of Arts for a little bit in the contemporary department. I moved to New York City and worked in some art galleries and was sleeping on couches, trying to make the whole thing work, doing data entry and art handling and bartending late at night, just like anything I could. And I left New York to come to Philadelphia because it was dramatically cheaper. And on the way home from trying to get a job at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, I walked into a Whole Foods. And that's when they used to have like the job kiosks like in the store. And I
Yeah.
walked in, I just applied for every single job that was open. And I got hired as a janitor.
Oh, wow.
I worked my way up into produce, and then I worked my way up through Whole Foods pretty rapidly. And I had a career there as a buyer and a manager, and was just naturally good at it.
Yeah.
It just kind of happened, and with no formal business training and not the strongest math skills when I was in school, everything just clicked. And I was getting frustrated when I was at Whole Foods. One of my favorite moments in my Whole Foods career, and this is all pre-Amazon, is I
Okay.
got sat down by some big regional bosses, and they basically were like, "You're too smart, and you're going to get yourself in trouble.
Mm.
Shut up and just keep doing what you're doing, and you're going to be totally fine." But I would find inconsistencies and procedures, and I would be like, this doesn't make sense. This is when Whole Foods started to become more streamlined by outside groceries advisors.
Hmm.
So they like discontinued buying produce directly from farmers. So when I
Mm.
was still there, I would get a call at 4 o'clock in the morning and buy strawberries from a farmer, and they would be in the store at 8 a.m.
Wow.
They stopped all that, and they wanted it all to go through their distribution center because they wanted consistency throughout their stores. So then I still had farmers calling me, and I was like, I can't work with you anymore. And one thing led to another, and I was offered a job with a produce brokerage company in Miami. And I just took it. And so I left Whole Foods. I took this brokerage job, which was a sales job where I would broker produce out of the port of Miami
Hmm.
and out of Immokalee, Florida, which are two major produce centers in America. And we're talking big agriculture. This is buy and sell a shipping container, a whole semi truck full of eggplant
Wow.
or green beans, and send them to a national chains distribution center. So I quickly got to see how big ag moved produce. I got to see prices and how much a box of limes was on the ground in Costa Rica, and then how much it was at port, and then how much it became at our port, and then how much it was charged to a distribution center, right? And every time it touched someone and was exchanged, how the prices were affected. I did this for, a little over a year, and it just wasn't satisfying. I would like tour these facilities. One of them was this company in Florida that is one of the largest green bean growers and processors in the country. And there was, I walked into their facility and there's like no people. This was a really crazy experience. There was no people, and walked in and I saw a literal dump truck pull up to this gate, dump a full dump truck of green beans into this like loading bay from the inside of the building, which you go into this like Olympic sized gymnasium type of building. It's all refrigerated. And these green beans are coming into like this like water wheel washing system.
Oh, wow.
And then, jetted into that pool was a conveyor belt that is then pulling out green beans. So far, the only person would be the driver of this dump truck, one person, right? Pulling these green beans into this conveyor belt system. And with like 4 or 5 people watching what's going on, out the other end, they're shooting out the like 1 pound package wrapped like French green bean packages, the like 1 pounds you see in every grocery
Yeah.
store, shooting those into a box, and that is shooting onto a pallet. And then someone with a forklift putting them in a refrigerator. It was
Wow.
crazy. So I got to see a lot of stuff like that. And then at the same time, where I am in Philadelphia, the neighborhood was changing, and a lot of my friends were opening up bars and restaurants, and they were like, "Hey, you're the produce guy. Can I get produce from you?" And I was like, "No, you can't. I don't know how to sell to you. And then I thought about it and I was like, I think I can. And so I left the big agriculture brokerage industry and bought a truck and started running produce directly to restaurants. And that was the how River Wards was born. River Wards refers to the neighborhoods in Philadelphia that border the Delaware River.
Mm,
So there's a series of them, and that's where we were founded.
that's amazing. When you started, when you got the truck and you started, sourcing for your friends and their businesses, did you go back to farm direct sourcing at that point?
Yeah, so I called all these old farmers that I still had their numbers with from Whole Foods.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, I want to try something. And so I would go out and meet with them, and then they would put me in contact with others. And at the same time, the East Coast is very different than the West Coast, like LA, where you are, and California, which grows, more than half of the produce that's consumed in America. Lemons aren't local for us, like they are local for
Yeah.
you and things. And a lot of restaurants use lemons.
Yeah.
So what I did is I combined my sourcing from a national side of things and the local resources that I had into a company that was able to be full scale and as sustainable as possible, giving everyone what they needed.
Yeah. Would the lemons get delivered to your truck and then you would
No,
deliver them
no,
to
I
the
would I would go and pick them up
Okay.
from someone. Yeah.
Like do you
Uh
guys have like produce markets and stuff in
yeah,
Philly
we
as
have
well? Yeah.
so you have the Los Angeles produce market.
Yeah.
I've been around there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are hubs around the country where produce flows around. There's one in Queens, New York,
Okay.
and there's one in Philadelphia. And then the Philadelphia is the largest refrigerated building on the East Coast. Then the next one is Miami.
Wow. And so how long did you have that model of River Wards before you transitioned to a brick and mortar? And can you share a little bit about that like thought process and taking that leap?
Sure. So River Wards just started to gather steam as the neighborhood was changing. People were opening pizza places and restaurants, and I was just the produce guy. And so
Yeah.
it was a new territory. So I wasn't taking business away from anyone. I was just getting all the new business. And so that worked out well. And I started to run into some storage issues. A friend of mine in the area had this small garage. And when I mean small, it was like, 20 feet by 20 feet.
Wow.
And I asked her if I could use it. And she was like, if you clean it, you can use it. And so I cleaned it out and put some shelving in there and started to store like non-perishables in there. And how River Wards was really born was that it was fall and two restaurants wanted to order hundreds of pumpkins for these big displays and this fall festival that they were throwing. I How I got into all of this is I would just say yes,
Mm,
and so one restaurant is like, we'd want 300 pumpkins, and I was like, okay. And then literally within like the same week, someone was like, we're gonna need like a couple hundred pumpkins, and I was like, oh, okay. And I just said yes, and I had nowhere to put them, and so I started filling this garage with hundreds of pumpkins, and the neighbors were like, what is going on? And then they were like, can I buy a pumpkin? And I was like, yeah. And so I started to like sell stuff. People would just come by when I was loading or unloading the truck at the end of the day. And I would just kind of like do these like, garage sale deals.
Yeah.
And then that was in the fall. And so then the next spring, I started doing pop-ups on the weekend. By then, I had built a little walk-in cooler kind of in the garage. Like, you know, some of the farmers and some of the entrepreneurs probably know what a CoolBot is. That's where
Mm-hmm.
you like hack an air conditioner. So I built one of those in there and like ran cold water to like kind of have a sink and built this little makeshift market. And our first pop-up on the weekend was slammed
Wow.
with like a line down the street. And we didn't have a cash register. We had like two calculators to kind of like compute weight and stuff. It never really stopped. And so, we did that for that season. And then that fall, we were shown this space around the corner, which, is an old firehouse that was built in 1880 that ended up
Wow.
being our first location.
That's such an awesome story. I think I saw photos on Instagram of the pumpkins outside the garage. Does that sound
There's
possible?
a there's a chance.
Yeah. I have a visual
Uh,
of it anyway.
Deep in the Instagram, I definitely have photos from that.
Yeah.
From the garage, from the opening, from all of the chaos that it was, and before we really got it all organized.
Yeah. It's so awesome. It sounds like perhaps you didn't start this business to change the food industry. You weren't like, this needs to change. You were like, you came at it from a different angle, we'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah. You opened the brick and mortar. That happens in 2016.
hmm
When you did that, I'm assuming that there was a point in time where you had to go, how am I gonna fill this store? And you have your farm direct relationships that I know you continue to honor. But did you also incorporate distribution, and what did that sort of look like for you?
Yeah. When I first took a look at the space, my reaction was, this is so big. There's no way I can fill it. Now we're on the other side of that spectrum where it's too small.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, so I had access to wholesale.
hmm
So I had things in large, I could get things in large amounts, and I had expanded our catalog from fresh fruits and vegetables to also include like dried fruits and nuts and some spices. So we would pack that stuff up. And then for opening the market, I had to build a relationship with a major distributor,
Mm,
um, UNFI, which is like the natural food mafia. I'm not afraid to say it. They're the necessary evil that is all around natural food as the major leading distribution source. KeHE Foods is the second leading natural food distributor in the country. We deal with both. Getting UNFI was hard because I think we had to commit to something like $5,000 a week in orders, and then it had to be COD. A lot of financial strain in the beginning. I started Riverwards with all my own money. Like I bought a truck for $1,000 and started it, and would buy something for $5 and sell it for 7
right.
and just repeat rapidly. To open the brick and mortar, I launched a Kickstarter. We raised $20,000, spent that immediately on refrigeration. It was like not enough. We had to open before all the refrigeration arrived because we just like ran out of cash.
Right.
When we opened the doors for the first day, I had negative $400 in my bank account.
Wow.
Luckily, we had the support of the community and there was a line to get in, right? And we did so much business on our first day that they locked our bank accounts. And we were like, what's going on? There's money coming in fast right now. And they locked it. And then it like, luckily I was able to like borrow some money. We had to like use the cash from the registers to like buy more product. It was like a
That's
disaster. It was
madness.
crazy. But it all worked out, and we slowly built it up over the years, adding refrigeration, adding bulk sets, changing the layout. We must have changed the iteration and the format of the store a dozen times. And it now, makes the most sense as a market. And, if we were to open that market today, there's at least $150,000 worth of refrigeration downstairs now.
Wow.
But doing that in like $20,000 chunks over 3.5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so cool to hear this story and realize that community is really at the center. Seems like it's at the center from listening to you of River Wards and of what you're doing. It started with your friends and grew within the community, your community coming to support you. I think that's a really awesome story. And you and I had a chance to connect before this podcast, and you shared a little bit with me about how you think about filling your market and how you think about what products you're going to have in the store and available on the shelf. And I want to talk a little bit about that. And I also want to talk about some of the challenges that are faced by someone like you, who's an independent grocer, who's not buying in the volume that, a Kroger or a Price Chopper on the East Coast or what have you is buying. And how do you compete, if you will, when a similar product may be on the shelf in both locations, but you're obviously paying more for it to get it on your shelf?
To answer the first part of your question about how I curate what is in our stores, one thing that I always had a mission to be was I didn't want to be a boutique market. I don't have anything against boutique food markets, but one thing that I always thought was the negative side of that was the accessibility of food. You can take a head of Romanesco cauliflower and put it on a pedestal and sell it for $8. But I know farmers that grow thousands of them, and they gladly would sell me 200 or 300 heads at $2.
Right.
And I can sell them for $4.
Right.
To marry the idea of selling more things at an affordable price to increase the access is a big part of what we do. Marrying that with, we're not 100% local. We're not 100% organic. I think that we are very far from that being the norm. And when you do that, you exclude entire communities and entire classes of hungry people that don't have the ability to access that food.
Yeah.
So we blend our selection to focus on cooking. And that's my goal. I want someone that can come in and they can buy an entire basket of produce for like $25 and they can get a ton of food. Or, you can buy a single bottle of olive oil for $35 at my store. But I also got some olive oil for like $8.
Yeah.
And to give people the idea that if they can get lettuce or kale or leeks for an affordable price, that they might splurge for the expensive olive oil or the different variety of pasta sauce.
Yeah. The point of sort of exclusivity, when I had my food pop up, my food business, I struggled with that a lot because we were so tiny and we didn't have the additional sourcing. So we were trying to be a pop-up without any of that additional business, happening. And we struggled all of the time with the price we needed to resell this produce at to make it work for us as a business, and how many people we were excluding, including ourselves, quite frankly. Like I couldn't afford you know, to buy the groceries at the price that I was selling them. And I grappled with that a lot. For me, there was a pendulum swing too in like how I thought about food and what we quote should be eating, and who we should be supporting in terms of like the farmers and the producers in our area. And for a while I was like, it can only be this, and it's come back. The most important thing is access to food. And
Yeah.
right. And with the good food revolution, it's like we want the best for everyone. And I think it's really cool that you've pointed out that just because you're going direct doesn't mean your prices are super high. And it also doesn't mean that you're getting I'm going to call it standard cauliflower. You can still get beautiful, special products in the store and make them affordable. So I just wanted to sort of applaud that and like just shine a light on that, because I think that shift in mindset is important it was important for me, and I think it's important for a lot of folks in the industry.
I agree. And I'm not here to say that I don't believe in organics or anything like that. I'm here to say that there's a larger ecosystem around eating.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important for us to support. For me, my goal is to get people to cook food.
Yeah.
Because in this day and age, we have outsource everything. I can do everything from my phone. I can have someone come and pick up my dirty laundry and go wash it, fold it, and bring it, drop it off at my door with my groceries. I can date someone. I can send someone a birthday present, right? And then cooking food is this physical and mental part of being human, of like nurturing and providing for yourself. And I think that in this day and age, when we have a lot of distractions, it's one of the few moments where you can't be on a device.
Mm-hmm.
And it is good for you, and it can be therapy, it can be relaxing, and it doesn't have to be complicated. And to teach people that just cooking a sweet potato and putting butter and maple syrup on it is like so fucking good.
Yeah.
And it's good for you. And don't like be like, no, you shouldn't be putting maple syrup on your sweet potato or butter. It's bad, like stop shaming people about food, because what you're doing is you're pushing an entire group of people away from eating, and you're pushing them into a direction of food that isn't the best for you. And they're the people that need it most.
Yeah.
And eating just a potato, it can be amazing and delicious and satisfying. And we need to support moments like this instead of, being like, oh, that's just for poor people, or, make some Irish potato famine joke about something like that. When you and I both know that depending on which restaurant you go to, you can make a russet potato cost $1, or you can make it cost $60.
Yep.
And it all has to do with opening that up for people.
Yeah. I think, for me, there are certainly nights where the idea of cooking is like, I am tired and I don't have the energy. It's hard to wrap my brain around what I'm going to put together. So yeah, there are definitely those nights, but the majority of the time, it's the one part of the day where nothing else is happening except a meal preparation. And yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated. It's me and my husband in the kitchen, sometimes just me, because I enjoy that quiet and that space, that sort of therapy of like chopping an onion or like cleaning kale, in a very rhythmic kind of way. And I call myself a grandma all the time. Like, if it could be made in one pot, if it can be braised, like give me white wine or broth and butter, and I will just make you something that's, probably not that colorful, but really, really tasty,
Yeah.
So, and similar to you, with a mom who loved cooking and grandparents who were very connected to their background and bringing, I'm Polish. I celebrate my Polishness very much. Like, I will teach anyone and everyone how to make a pierogi by hand. If I see you eating a pierogi from the grocery store, cool. I'm glad you know what a pierogi is, but I want to also teach you how to make a pierogi because I think it's one of the best things in the world. So food has a lot of meaning to me. And I think, even if someone doesn't come from a background like I do or like you do, you can create your own food memories and connections to food. And I think the opportunity to be able to afford and to buy food is one that can help to foster that, which is really exciting. And that too is changing. It's changing the food industry in a way, right? It might feel small, but it's huge.
Yeah. Nostalgia is such an important experience for me because, like you touched on, the way that food can make you feel and those memories connected with it, it's super therapeutic. A soup that a caretaker would make for you when you were a child, if you were sick, a parent or a grandparent or a relative, something that someone used to make that isn't around anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting when I always joke about recreating my grandmother's recipes with all like the best food
Yeah.
and it doesn't taste the same. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, I've done that
And
with pierogies and we went right back to the OG recipe and ingredients
yeah,
because it's just there's the way.
yeah. And I think that knowledge around food is important and the way like and I just want that's like though I get back to the cooking. I just
Yeah.
want people to feel comfortable and to make mistakes. And I think that how social media presents food can be positive in a way where people get creative. Recipes now appear in our feeds
Yeah.
consistently, and sometimes the ingredients are like impossible, but sometimes they're not. I think that it's a good place to start to get excited about food.
Yeah.
And I guess when you talk about like changing the industry, my goal first is to get people excited about food, and then one of the biggest difficulties we have is obtaining ingredients and offering them at prices that are good and
Mm-hmm.
affordable. When we talk about ingredients that we're all used to, I don't have the purchasing power to buy something cheaper than what a big box store sells it for.
Right.
So something that is very recognizable, like Heinz tomato ketchup in a glass bottle,
Mm-hmm.
we sell that because there is that vinegar umami-ness of Heinz in a glass bottle is nostalgic and it's important to people.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll never be able to sell it as cheap as Walmart
Right.
or a big box store because of their purchasing power. And it's not fair that the independent grocery sector is carrying these big box stores because we often pay more. Our cost is more than their retail.
Right.
And it makes us look like we're price gouging. And customers are like, oh, you're making so much money. And we're like, we're not. We're trying. Grocery is not a place to make $1 million.
Yeah.
It's a mission-based industry, whether you like it or not. And it can be frustrating about that. And there are so many fees and things that are put on the shoulders of independent grocers, from credit card processing fees, which is something that I'm like real passionate about. I've been talking with reporters about this recently. Is some of us pay over 2.5%.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that when you were running your pop-up, you used Square or
Yep.
Stripe or something.
Yep.
When you find out that big box stores can pay under 1% per transaction, or that the EU implemented rules to ban and stop this, and like stopped credit card processing fees, and it's at 0.025%.
Wow.
And in America, an independent business owner can start paying something around 3%. And that comes right out of your bottom line.
Yeah.
And that's often not talked about. And with inflation hitting us at all different angles, it's very difficult to make it all work. And I invest directly out of our bottom line in our health insurance program, and that's no joke to offer. And everyone asks how I do it, and I just say, I'm like, I pay for it. I
Yeah.
pay for it.
I wanted to touch on that because in the intro, I shared that, you were the first independent market in Philly to pay a $16 minimum wage. I'm not sure what the standard minimum wage was at the time that you did that, and to offer medical benefits to your full-time employees. I mean, it is safe to say that is not industry standard, right? When you're looking at grocery across the board, they're at the federal or state minimum wage, right? Like the lowest they can possibly be at. And I think, benefits are hard to come by. And so I think, stepping up and doing that, that's creating a more equitable food system. And you're saying out of the bottom line, you're paying for that. But I think, unfortunately, it's on our shoulders as well to educate the consumer on why the ketchup is more expensive on the shelf, and B, the fact that we're taking care of our people. We're supporting our community, right? Of folks who work in the store, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, what was the standard minimum wage when you set yours at 16? Do you remember?
Yeah, 7.25.
Wow. Is that what I just recently heard it's still that in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
That is bonkers.
Yeah. So that was a really interesting journey, right? Because I couldn't pay that out the gate.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah.
I was starting people at like $10, $11, $12 an hour, but that was when there was like
even still,
eight of us.
Right.
And I wasn't paying myself. For the progression of us to like slowly build up, I remember pre-COVID when we were like, we're going to bring every employee up to 15. And there was some folks that worked for me at the time that were not into that made 16 or 17.
Right.
And they were like, buyers and drivers. And they're like, well, you're going to pay a cashier $15 an hour, which was very, it was super eye-opening to have that come from people who I thought I was like, well, it's not about you, it's about them. So that was shocking, but an awesome experience.
Yeah.
So when we brought everyone up to 15 pre-COVID, during COVID, we offered an additional dollar as like hazard pay.
Right.
To 16. And then I had a store meeting and I was like, I'm not going to just take it away from you.
Yeah.
And we're just going to make our you keep your dollar, and our new minimum wage is 16.
That's amazing. That's really, really amazing. I think it's interesting too when you share that like some people on the team were not super happy that others were going to get a raise that was bringing their hourly pay very close. I think that speaks to how we're trained to think about value, right? And how we're trained to think about a business and how it runs and the worth of one position versus another. Everyone in our company gets paid the same rate, including me. That's important to me because I think it sends the message that every role in this organization is important. And if one went away, or we wouldn't be the same business, right? If there were no cashiers or, it's not a market anymore. It's very difficult to operate. Every role is important, even the janitorial role, right? Like that's valuable. It's just as valuable.
For sure.
Did you struggle financially at all, as a result of that decision? Or, was it, how did you kind of cope with that? Because I think a lot of people some people take the leap before they know that they're stable enough to do it, and other people don't take the leap because they're just afraid. So I wonder if you have anything to share around making that decision.
Our benefits package is one of my biggest investments in the company. We could not offer health insurance until we had the additional revenue from our second location.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have close to 80 employees.
Wow.
Our payroll and our benefits are real numbers every month. That's just the actual cost. That's not money that could have gone somewhere. That's not a productive or responsible way to look at it. You're like, no, like I take care of my employees, and in turn, you get better output and better employee retention
Yeah.
is the goal. We've always been ahead of the curve to do that. There does become the issue that in order to sustain this,
Mm-hmm.
growth is part of the equation, and then it becomes a slippery slope of when do you stop? Can you stop? What happens? How do you do it? My goal is to build Riverwards as a organization that doesn't forget its roots, but can continue to grow and expand, open more markets, bigger markets in other areas, and still hold true to its ethos.
Yeah, that's amazing. I want to touch on for a moment the sourcing that you do for the stores. A lot of our listeners are CPG brand founders. And, we talk a lot here about building a business on your own terms. And for some people, that means staying, small and regional, right? For others, that means being a national brand. For some, it means, if you're national, you're working with distributors. If you're regional, maybe you do, maybe you don't. And I wonder from the perspective of you, one, independent store owner, do you source directly from producers? I mean, I know you've got the UNFI relationship, but is it a mix, and sort of what are your thoughts on that, and sort of how do you guys do it?
We have hundreds and hundreds of personal relationships and get direct store deliveries every day, all day.
I love that.
The coordination for that is an extensive, super talented, highly educated buying team that is led, by me and my COO, Gina Harris, who's just an absolute powerhouse. She's actually in LA right now.
Oh
We
shit,
sent her
good.
to Expo West,
Nice.
um, and that is part of a bigger system, right? UNFI helps us get access to a lot of things, but our identity relies on how we mix and match and curate each individual category.
Yeah.
So we might have the same peanut butter as a lot of co-ops across the country, but then we also have, 3 or 4 brands that are local or regional or specialty that we get, DSD. So for us, it's about the blending of a category to make it impactful and delightful for a customer to do. We always play with categories and mess around. One thing that we've done that's been really successful is we merged our noodle category. So Italian pastas
Mm,
and things like that aren't in a different place than Asian noodles and things like that. It's all
yeah.
in one area. And that's been cool to watch people dig into that and just constantly refining all the time. We work our way, we go to a category and we're like, you know what, we need to refresh this. Or you know what, this company, like, sure, they might be based in New Jersey, which would be local for us, but they make a chicken sausage. But there's another company that is making kind of the same product that's woman owned and they're kind of cooler.
Hmm.
And so we'll switch. We're constantly like in and out of our products all the time. You
Yeah.
know, seafood, we're like not near any major ports or anything like that. We work with a couple local companies up in Maine. We're able to supplement and make sure that like people are getting what they want.
Yeah.
It is an ever changing, ever evolving process, and that's my favorite part. We're really particular and passionate about our sourcing when it comes to product. We're tasting everything. You know, one of our jokes is that like I get like three people roasting coffee and two hot sauce companies a week that
Yeah.
email me, and we're always refining. We're always tasting and being like, "Ooh, this is cool." One of us will bring to the table weekly, be like, "I think this is a really interesting product," or someone's dropping off samples and we'll try it and we'll be like, "This is not that good."
Right.
They are like they hit their packaging's beautiful. They're all their marks about who they are and what they do and everything is awesome. But it just like doesn't taste good and it doesn't taste good to us as a group, then we will deliver that feedback. And I
Yeah.
totally do. Like, hey, isn't really right for us at the time. And we're not really psyched on it. You know, and not everything is a slam dunk for everyone. And but we really want to make sure that each item that we put on our shelves is representing a category, representing a person, and fulfilling a need as the shopper, because we don't want someone to come in and get and see something that looks cool and then take the risk because it's like 8.99
Right.
and then it sucks. You know, we lose trust.
Yeah. Well, that goes back
And
to community, right? Like people are relying on you and your taste and your product mix, right? To be able to go to the store and sort of shop without hesitation in a sense in terms of how will this product perform, for lack of a better term. I totally get that. I mean, it's the same as with produce, right? You can taste two tomatoes. They might look the same, right? Or one might even be more beautiful and mealy, and the other one is maybe less beautiful and the best tomato you have tasted all season, right? Like you got to go for what is right for what you're trying to do and who your shoppers are, I think. And that goes for packaged goods just the same.
you bring up a really good point because it makes me think about flavors and where the lines blur of like what we choose and getting people in the store. And it's such an ecosystem of the products on the shelf, the employees that are engaged, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and ideally paying someone a high minimum wage and offering them benefits gives them some sense of security. So maybe their mental clarity is like they're not worried as much
Yeah.
and they might feel a little bit better to be at work. And so when you're staring at this set, our employees are going to ask you a question like, are you finding everything okay? And maybe break down that customer employee barrier and help everyone. And then at the same time, I'm again aesthetic focused. You know,
Mm-hmm.
our stores are beautiful. They're not in aluminum boxes with fluorescent lights like most grocery stores.
Yeah.
Our ceilings are tall. The first location is in an old firehouse. So beautiful, filled with natural light, and it's small and packed. But the music's good, the light's good, and people. It's a whole vibe. Our second location is three times as big. Beautiful building that my wife and I designed ourselves. Everything from the terrazzo floors that have recycled glass to the light
Wow.
fixtures that were custom fabricated by a local artisan. the lights are a little bit dim on purpose, right? A little more restaurant-y.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people will be like, it's a little too dark in here, but not all the time. But it's a mood, and it's meant to make shopping feel better. You come in and you have this like decompression. Music is always important, and that's like free range to the employees. Like they
Oh,
just
that's cool.
go crazy. And sometimes it'll be like a nightclub, and sometimes it'll be like, sad rainy day. But I think that like everyone does a really good job marrying all of those items into an experience, because I'll refer back to this. We're outsourcing experience, right? Even right now, you and I are in different parts of the country. We're not like in a sound booth. This isn't like a one-on-one thing, right? This isn't like Fresh Air, Terry Gross, or it's like, and that's cool. I get to interact with you, but there's a piece missing. And for me, fulfilling that piece and allowing people to come in and zone out and just relax
Yeah.
is my goal, because that's just part of the equation of taking care of yourself. And I think
Yeah.
to look at the grocery store as this sculpture about wellness and mood is the direction that we're going in. And as we get challenged and asked, like, will you build a bigger one? It's like, okay, like how do I build a bigger one that the community wants and
Yeah.
needs, and not lose sight of the stuff that we're after?
Yeah.
And those are challenges.
Yeah. And I think you asked the question, do I need to build a bigger one? Does it serve us and our customers to build a bigger one? There may be a max sweet spot, in terms of size for your stores, which I think is in and of itself too good. Just like sort of saying, I'm doing this on my terms, which you totally are, right? Yeah, maybe a huge place is perfect for you, but maybe not. Maybe you've got as big a store as you need, and that's what you replicate. And I think it's cool that you get to decide that, and to create that. I asked sort of at the beginning of the podcast, do you think that you're disrupting the industry? I mean, after this conversation, I would say a resounding yes. I felt that way coming into the conversation. But I mean, I could easily list the things that you are doing differently for the people who work for you, to the people who shop at your store, to the farmers that you support, right? Like, and the things that you're fighting against, like credit card fees, processing fees. I mean, all of that is in defiance, right? If we're being honest, of the way that things are typically done within the industry that you are a part of. And so I think it's really badass and awesome that you're doing it.
Thank you. It's not often that I get to zoom out and reflect on everything that River Wards has accomplished, and it can be humbling and nice. I think there's a lot of work to be done, and something that independent stores can have the confidence that they can make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it takes a lot of hard work, and that's something that I don't want to miss here, is that grocery retail commerce it's one of the oldest forms of transactions. This is a farmer growing food, trading it for something else. This has been going on since human existence, and it is a lot of work. My staff works so hard every day to make it happen every day.
Yeah.
And it is no joke. It's a grind, and there is satisfaction that comes along with it. And to reward someone on multiple levels, on multiple fronts. The pandemic did one thing, was it put grocery workers on a pedestal, and I'm not trying to see them removed. So for me, it's it's about sharing that knowledge. I get phone calls from people all over the country that are like, I want to open a market. And I'm like, awesome. What do you need?
Yeah.
I'll tell you how to do everything. And the special sauce for this is like, you have to bust your ass so much. When I started Riverwards, when I was in the truck delivering to restaurants and doing pop-ups, I was doing construction side jobs in the evenings, working in basements, doing plumbing work, gutting houses. I was working nonstop 7 days a week, all the
Right.
time to make it work. I have poured everything that I have into this organization to build it, to be able to be a company that offers what we do. And I think that it's important to understand the journey that it takes to come somewhere.
Mhm.
If I were to try to do Riverwards as it is right now, it would take millions of dollars.
I
I
think that's
couldn't duplicate it.
Yeah, that's a great message because I think when, we'll use your river words as an example, someone sees what you have today, what you've built. There can be the thought that like, well, if I'm going to do it, that's what it has to be from day one. And it doesn't have to be. It can start as a seedling in the community like yours did and grow, right? Test and transform and grow and build your community around you. If you have lots and lots of money and you could build a market that looks like yours now and you could do it sustainably, from, financial perspective and make it work, cool, do that too. But it doesn't have to be that from day one. I think that's an important message that you just shared.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of interesting projects all across the country that are dancing around the idea of like how to make it different and how to make it
Mm-hmm.
work. And one of my biggest nuggets of advice is you have one chance when someone walks through the door to give them a reason to be there. Focus on that. And that impact is what makes someone return.
Right.
When someone experiences something positive and they experience joy, they want to come back. They want to feel that feeling again. And you can do that very inexpensively if you focus on what the perception is of someone entering your space. If you come in and food's rotting or you it's sloppy, it's like maybe you're overextending yourself. Maybe you should only be open Saturday and Sundays to start,
Mm-hmm.
and make sure that like Saturday 10 a.m. open is like magic.
Yeah.
And it just focus on that experience, because that's where everyone else is cutting. And that's something that I want to double down on, is that independent grocers and restaurants and businesses in general provide such an amazing experience. And you're seeing these external elements from big boxes being cut.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon cutting parts of Whole Foods that were cool,
Mm-hmm.
like coffee bars or bulk departments or elements here and there. They're eroding these specialty segments that made them special in the first place. And that experience is gone. And, people are looking for that. And that can literally be as cheap as a smile. And like, or you getting really excited about something,
Yeah.
getting so excited about a product and being like, seeing it in a basket. And I do this all the time. Every time I'm walking through, I'm like, oh my God, that olive oil is so good. And they're like, oh, I've never tried it before. And then you have a moment to connect with
Yeah.
someone. It's so ingrained in what food is and cooking is, that I think that, I just want to share more of it.
Yeah. It's making me recall, when we had our pop-up, it was very boutique, but it was all, all farm direct and a little bit of artisan stuff. And we made it as beautiful as we could, but we fed people too, you know? And the coolest thing I think that we learned, we would put together these baskets with like a couple recipes, right? So side dishes essentially, or like a vegetarian meal for two, this beautiful produce in this beautiful basket and these recipes. And people would tell us, your baskets have changed the way we eat. It's allowed us to start cooking at home because we didn't know how. We thought salad tasted bad, and we don't like salad dressing in a bottle, and but it was like, yeah, just put olive oil and lemon together, or like a dash of good soy sauce and some garlic in there, you know what I mean? And put it on this really beautiful butter lettuce, and like, you're going to die. It's going to be so good,
Yeah, for sure.
As someone who grew up with family members who cooked and who just like yummed and loved the experience of food, to encounter individuals who are like, I don't know what to do with this, and I don't know what a zucchini is or an eggplant is, and to say, oh, I got you, take this, try this, here's this, like, cut it in half, olive oil, salt, pepper, it's going to be amazing. It can change people's lives. And you're in, and your team, you're in the role of like that interaction, that really cool, like really amazing interaction that I miss. I often dream about like just going to work at a market, just like once a week or something, to have that experience back again. But I think the cool thing about it is that it happens through the supply chain, right? When the farmers are helping to make that happen, and every human who's planting and picking, and then same with those CPG brands, you're a part of it by extension, and so even though you might be listening as a CPG brand founder and you're not getting to see that interaction and the enjoyment of the consumer, at purchase or at home, like, it's happening and you're part of that story and you're part of that change, which I think is really cool to be a part of.
Absolutely. And, to your listeners that have started a product, get in those stores and demo. Like, this is so old school, but it works tremendously. And again, it's happening less and less because some of the first people that are being cut from these big box stores are demo coordinators or healthy eating specialists and people of the like. We always offer tables to anyone that hits us up. I'm like, you can pop up outside our market, no charge. We don't even sell your stuff. And we do it all the time.
That's awesome.
Because we act as this incubator. And then sometimes it'll be such a success, we'll be like, all right, let's get it on the shelf.
Yeah.
Or they're like, I don't ever want to do this again. This is a lot of work, and this isn't my thing. And we're like, cool. No cost to them or us. It's just they figured it out.
Yeah.
But if you are making a product, offer to go into a market and demo it for free and put it in people's mouths. There is products right now on my shelf that have a slightly high price point that are locally made. But when they're in the store telling their story and sharing and putting food into a customer's mouth, they sell it out every time. It is flawless. It works so good. And it just goes to show you that people are looking for a connection. And, you have to be analog about it. And that's something that Riverwards is always on the brink of, is like, we do not do delivery. We are non-auto centric. We are in the center of neighborhoods. We are a walking market. We encourage our customers to shop every day, every other day in a more European style, to come in, buy food for dinner, that your leftovers are for lunch, and you have something for breakfast, and then come back. We have an extremely high return rate of like 75, 80%. And our basket size is small. It's around $30, $35. And people realize that they can trust us and count on us to come back daily to shop for the evening or the next day or two. This is an incredible reduction in food waste because it's not the American way of coming to the grocery store on Sunday and buying a week's worth of groceries, packing it in your fridge, forgetting about half of it, or deciding that you don't want to cook it that night and then you go out to eat or order food in. This is like, I'm hungry and the grocery store is 10 minutes from my house.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really awesome. I love everything that you're up to. And I just think that it's been an amazing conversation. And I hope it inspires folks who are thinking about starting a market or who have a market and maybe are wanting to better foster community or tap into nostalgia and other, newer products, right? And creating that blend for people, which I think is really cool. And also doing what they can to pay people well and continue to change the industry in that way as well. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you. I feel like I could stay here forever, but I know we both got business we have to tend to on this. It has gotten, anyone watching on YouTube, it's gotten like increasingly darker over here throughout this episode. I'm in LA and it's pouring outside, and you are in Philly and it's raining there as well. Yeah.
It's raining and it's dark. But it's so funny because like to talk about how the weather changes everyone's vibes, right? So it's raining. We have a time difference. Right now it's 5:15. Okay. So it's dinner time. Yeah. And our markets get really busy around this time. It's Friday night. So there is this weird vibes where it's like people were going to maybe go out, but it's kind of crummy outside. So maybe they want to come in. They look at delivery and it's like 2.5 hours to get a pizza because everyone's doing the same thing. And then all of a sudden, like reluctantly, they throw on their rain jackets and they're going to come down to the market and they're going to buy stuff to make like tacos.
Yeah.
And it happens, and it's a real thing. We become this resource for community, and that's an important aspect. It's like we're almost like a utility company, and I want to make sure that we listen to our customers, we give them what they want. So like we want bigger flour tortillas because we want to make burritos. It's like, I got you. Like we're going to find the best ones we can find and they're here. Yeah. It's funny,
That's awesome. Any last thoughts or anything from your end before we sign off?
I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about our journey and everything that Riverwards has accomplished, and everywhere that we've been and everywhere that we want to go and grow as a company. And anyone listening that wants to reach out, feel free to, reach out to me on Instagram. It's our main way that we communicate with our customers and our fans around the country and promote local food.
Yeah. And we so appreciate you being here today. I hope that people take advantage of that. I'd also love to get you in the community. I have a grand idea of bringing together some other independent market owners for a fireside chat or something like that. One of our missions is to bring the podcast sort of IRL, bringing people together, I think, to interact with folks like you and, others that I have got in mind who are really creating interesting shopping experiences. And going back to something you said, like changing the way categories are set up in stores, I think is huge. And we didn't really dive into that much here, but I think that changes perspectives from the shopper point of view. And that in and of itself is hugely impactful as a shopping experience. And, maybe we could talk about that a little bit more. But as I said, I don't want this conversation to end, but we've exceeded our hour. Thank you again so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Have a good day. Vincent and a panel of other independent grocers and buyers will be coming together for a fireside chat inside the Good Food CFO community. This is a free event open to all members. So click on the link in the show notes or visit join.thegoodfoodcfo.com for date and time information and to RSVP. As always, I am so grateful to have spent time with you here today. If you enjoyed this episode or found it helpful or inspiring in any way, please share it with your founder friends on social and rate and review the podcast wherever you listen. It's the #1 way to help more good food founders find the show. I'll be back with a brand new episode in 2 weeks.